Hello there folks, it's Tyson and I am coming to you from the Basement Workshop. Now today we aren't working on a project, but we are going to be talking about the sun, the moon, some other cool stuff, and you might notice that I'm wearing a hat today. And you might say, why is he wearing a hat? Well, the reason I am wearing a hat is because I went to a thrift shop over the weekend and I thought this was a pretty cool hat, so I bought it for $2. I brought it home, I washed it, and now I really like it. Now the reason I'm telling you that is because we've been talking a bit about recycling, reducing, reusing, and protecting the environment, and using secondhand clothing or buying secondhand clothing is a really great way to cut down on waste that people are making, because there's a lot of energy and resources, a lot of time that goes into creating clothing. And if we wear it for a little and then just toss it, that means that's a lot of energy that's getting wasted. The other thing is that you can save a lot of money by buying secondhand clothes too. So I got this hat, I have this shirt, and I've had this shirt for like 7 or 8 years, I think. It's literally been around the world with me, and it's still looking pretty good. And it cost me maybe like $5. So, hey, if you can do it, try to buy some secondhand clothing to cut down on waste and to save a bit of money. Now, let's say good morning to little Tyson. Let's turn on these lights. Let's get down to business talking about the moon. Today I have some markers with me for some drawing I'm going to do. And I've also got this funky little thing. Now, most of you have probably seen something like this before. Do you know what it's called? This is a compass. And this is a really special compass for me because I got it from a friend of mine that I used to work with. Her name is Janice. And I was going on a trip and it was a really thoughtful gift. She thought it could come in handy for me. So thank you, Janice. Great thing to have for my adventures. Now, today we are going to be talking about the sun, the moon, and the earth, of course, because that's where we live. And I'm going to make a little diagram here, and let's talk about how our solar system works. So, let's say this is the sun, and the sun is the center of our solar system. That's why it's called a solar system. That means it's all going on around the sun. Now, we have Earth, that's here, and most people know this, I think, but it's worth reminding you that the sun is the center and the Earth moves around the sun. That's called an orbit. Now, the Earth doesn't move exactly in a perfect circle, but it kind of circles around the sun, and that's how we have our different seasons. Now, we've talked about that, and of course, you remember the Earth also rotates as well. But that's not so important today. We are going to talk about the moon as well. So the Earth orbits around the sun in 1 year, right? 365 days. 365 and a quarter. That's why we have leap years sometimes. And then this is our moon. And the moon rotates, the moon orbits around the Earth. Now, the moon doesn't have a perfectly circular orbit either, but it's close. So we have the Earth orbiting around the sun, and we have the moon orbiting around the Earth. Now, you might be saying, why are you telling me this, Tyson? We're going to get there in just a moment. Now, the reason that I have a compass is because we're going to talk a little bit today about directions and something that are called the cardinal directions. So you might have heard the word cardinal talking about a bird, but in this case, we're talking about cardinal directions, which are the 4 main directions that we talk about. So if you've ever looked at a map, you've probably noticed that there's something like this, maybe an arrow, looks kind of like the Star Trek symbol, and there's probably a letter underneath it, like this. So, do you know what that letter stands for? You might not. But there are also probably some other letters around there too. You've probably seen N, E, S, and W. So those letters stand for the cardinal directions, and those are north, east, south, and west. So why am I telling you about this? It's because you might know that the sun rises in the east and it sets, I'm just going to write sets. It sets in the west. So typically, if you were to watch the sun through a day, it goes something like this, rising in the east and setting in the west. Now, depending on the time of year, it might have a path that's kind of more like this, a little bit lower on the horizon. That's going to be in winter time because of the tilt of the earth. And in the summer, it might go a little bit higher. It might go almost directly above your head at around 12 o'clock at noon. So the path changes a little bit through the seasons, through the year, but it always rises in the east and sets in the west. Now the same is true with the moon. So I'm telling you this because today is a very special day. Today is January 28th, and there is a full moon tonight. So what happens when there's a full moon? You might actually be able to see the sunset and the moon rise at the same time. Pretty cool, hey? So let's think about it. If you are a wonderful human who is standing on the earth, you know that you might want to go in your backyard, or you could go to a park. It's really great if you can go somewhere where there's not a whole bunch of light, because it's going to be easier to see if you don't have a bunch of man-made lights and light pollution around you. So if you look to the east, you may see the moon rising, and if you look to the west, you may see the sun setting happening at the same time. So I think that is a pretty cool situation to be in. Now, one thing that's important to know is that the sunset today, now I'm in Winnipeg, and you might be further north, so you might have a different time, but in Winnipeg today, the sunset is around 5:15 p.m. Now, I looked online, it said 5:17, but you don't want to miss it. So I'm going to go outside today, probably around 5 o'clock, maybe 5:05, and I am going to see if I can watch the sunset and the moon rise at the same time. Now, the other thing is, according to the article I was reading, the best time to see this is around the equinox. Now, that's something you may have learned about. That's when the amount of sunlight time and the amount of nighttime are almost the same. They're almost equal. And that happens in March. So, you've got a few full moons. You've got one in January, one in February, one in March. So you can practice this over the next couple months. See if you can catch that sunset and moonrise at the same time. Now, I wanted to just throw out a couple other neat facts that I learned as I was researching this. Did you know that there is actually a moon that is called Métis? Pretty cool, eh? So there's a moon named Métis, and it's not the Earth's moon, but it's Jupiter's moon. Now, believe it or not, there are more than one moon on Jupiter, and this is Jupiter's moon 16, which is called Métis. I think that's pretty neat. Now, if you want, you can do a little bit of research and find out why it's called Métis. The other thing is, because it's January 28th, and you might have learned in that seasons lesson and life with the Métis through the seasons, that each different full moon has a different name. And each full moon has a different name depending on the group of people that was seeing it and giving it that name. So in the Farmer's Almanac, it's called a wolf moon. And that's because people used to hear the wolves howling at the moon in January in this time. They used to think it was because wolves were hungry in January because they couldn't find enough food. It's not actually true. It's just that wolves howl to communicate with each other, mark their territory, that sort of thing. But another cool thing is the Ojibwe name for the January full moon. The Ojibwe name, now I'm going to try to say this as well as I can. The Ojibwe name for the January full moon is Mnido Gizis. And what that means is the spirit moon. And the reason it's called the spirit moon is because January is a pretty cold time. It's a time where people can sit and reflect. And so for Ojibwe folks, the January full moon was a time when they would think about their place in creation and think about the natural world around them. So I think this is some pretty cool stuff here. I hope you found it interesting. I know I'm going to be out and about between 5 o'clock and 5:30 to see if I can see the moonrise and the sun set at the same time. So I hope you had a wonderful time thinking about this. Do a little bit of research on your own. I will put a link to the article that I learned about this from in the bottom of the video here. And I hope you have a wonderful day checking out those astronomical events. So let's turn off our lights, and I will see you next time.